Thank you so much for coming. It's been a really exciting time planning this thing, so I hope you guys are going to enjoy it. This is the Diversity and Inclusion Council's Walking the Walk Together panel series. These panels are led by students and alumni from SCU, and our panelists tonight are leaders in STEM and other communities who are dedicated to bringing diversity and inclusion wherever they go. Our hope is that these panels start a conversation. They educate allyship, and they bring together all cultures and diversities to turn words into actionable steps and to help move our community forward in a positive way. Our theme for the panel today is perseverance and celebrating success, but we'll probably touch on a lot of different topics as well. Before we start, a few house rules. For our Santa Clara students watching live on Zoom, please keep your video off and your microphone as well. But the chat room is open, and I invite you to use it if you have any questions throughout the event. For everyone watching on our live stream across the world, there's a Google form on the webpage for you to submit any questions throughout the event as well. Some of our previous panels have included topics like understanding how to be an ally, or even taking it a step further and becoming what Seidel Curry-Lee called an accomplice. We've also heard from SU's very own alumni, Uche Agwu and Naeem Turner Bendele, on how you can hold institutions accountable for the goals they set, especially regarding diversity and inclusion. So, if you want to watch any of these past panels or hear from panelists like Ellen Ochoa, the first Hispanic astronaut, you can find the recordings at scu.edu/engineering/WTWT. Now, before we continue on, I wanted to make sure to shout out all the students, faculty, and staff for making it through their first full-on virtual quarter. So to all those watching, remember, you worked hard, you earned your spot, you deserve to be here, and you belong. So with all that, allow me to introduce myself. My name is AJ Anderhope. I'm a graduate of the class of 2020 from Santa Clara University and currently working as a software engineer for Microsoft. As a student, I was very involved in the Society of Hispanic Professional Engineers, better known as SHIP. So be sure to check them out at Instagram at SHIP_SCU. That's SHPE_SCU. Now I'm going to pass it off to Josh to finish up these introductions.
Hey everyone, my name is Josh and I am a junior marketing major, communications minor. So while I'm not in the engineering school, I've been pretty involved in diversity and inclusion work on campus, and I'm very excited to be here. So some other things I'm a part of on campus is Barkada, which is our Filipino and Philam organization, as well as USAA, the Undocumented Student and Allies Association. You can follow both of them on Instagram at SCU Barkada and at SCU_USAA. So before we begin, we want to give a quick breakdown of the schedule. So right now we're going through quick introductions of the panel, and then from 6:05 to 6:15, we'll have the actual panelists introduce themselves. And from 6:15 to 6:50, we'll have a Q&A with the panelists, moderated by myself and AJ. From 6:55 to 7 o'clock, we'll have closing remarks, and that will be the end of the event. So without further ado, we just really wanted to emphasize that if you have any questions at all, you can throw them in the chat, and we will try to get to as many of them as we can. So now it's time to introduce our guest panelists, and we are really honored and excited to have 4 panelists with us today who are from all across the world, or all across this country, excuse me, to bring various points of view on the issues at hand. So panelists, as we say your name, it would be really great if you could take just about a minute or so to tell the audience who you are and what you're doing. So let's start with Akeem Brown.
How did I know that was coming first? Good afternoon, everybody. Akeem Brown here, the Hidden Genius Project. We train and mentor Black male youth in technology, creation, entrepreneurship, leadership skills to transform their lives and communities. At a higher level, what we're really trying to do is to raise the next wave of young men of color who can lead their community and build solutions that to the problems that persist in their communities. But that's my 9 to 5. My 5 to 9 is I run a firm called Corporately LLC, where I provide culturally responsive business formation and compliance services. So I'm the guy who you can call late at night. Just think of me as Jake from State Farm. When you're stressing about a legal issue, you can definitely hit me up and I'll help you out in a culturally responsive and a culturally relevant manner. Thank you for having me here tonight.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Akeem. So next up, we'll have Sarahi Espinoza Salamanca introduce herself.
Hello, everyone. My name is Sarahi Espinoza Salamanca. I am founder and CEO of Dreamers Roadmap, a free national mobile app where we help undocumented young people find scholarships to go to college across the country. I am a Forbes 30 Under 30 White House Champion of Change, and most recently launched 2 amazing campaigns that I hope I can speak about later. It'll probably come up in the questions, but just, really excited to be here. I'm kind of getting used to the kind of vibe, right? And I love that I see lots of women in here representing. So hopefully in the near future, we have more women. Pero ahí vamos poco a poco, but just really happy to be here and really excited to meet y'all as the event goes on.
Thank you so much. So next up, we'll have Sergio Martinez.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Sergio Martinez. I'm the Director of Talent Acquisition with the Golden State Warriors and Chase Center, the NBA professional basketball team in San Francisco, California. I've had a career of over 10 years working within human resources and talent acquisition. I lead a small team with the Warriors. I'm one of the founding members of our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Council, also a founding member of one of our newly formed employee resource groups called Fuerza Números, kind of like a Spanish play on words of strength in numbers, which is kind of like the motto of the basketball team. And so I'm very passionate and interested about the topic of diversity inclusion, always thinking of how we can help build a more inclusive and diverse workforce that comes from all different backgrounds, really looking for diversity of thought as well. The sports entertainment industry is a really fascinating industry to work in. It's one that I've only been a part of for about 4 or 5 years now. But you know what? We're business like any other. We're looking for accountants, marketers, human resource folks. And so I feel like part of my job is really educating the public about how we are an employer. And so I'm just thrilled to be here. It's an honor to be here with the other speakers. So I'm looking forward to a really engaging conversation. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Sergio. And so our 4th panelist, Andy Casagrande, unfortunately can't be here at the moment, and we're hoping that he'll be able to join us some point later on in the panel. But for now, I'm going to pass it back to AJ so we can get this panel started.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Josh. And thank you to all the panelists for those wonderful introductions. Now, again, the theme for the panel today is perseverance and celebrating success. But feel free to take the conversation wherever you think you want it to go. We're very excited to hear what you guys have to say. So let's get ahead. Let's go ahead and dive right in. Panelists, you don't have to answer every question either. So just jump in whenever you have something to add. But we're going to start with like a general question for everyone. And the first question is, if you noticed an institutional problem and spoke up about it, what response would you expect? And what set of actions would you take to indicate that the institution is changing for the better?
This is Sergio. I can get things started, I guess. I mean, I think of, I'm trying to think of like concrete examples that come to mind. I know that, for example, in recruiting or talent acquisition, which is kind of fancy word of just like hiring people, like the easy way to do my job with the Golden State Warriors is that there's a lot of people that are attracted by the basketball team due to its recent success. and we have a very strong employer brand. And so in a certain regard, it's very easy to fill certain jobs. We can just post a job and see who applies and just work from there. But of course, recruiting is a lot more complicated than that, because, like, who's seeing our job postings? Are we making sure that we're reaching out to job seekers where they are to educate them about our job opportunities? And so that's really how you go about creating a diverse pipeline. And so I know that, like, when I first joined the organization a few years ago, especially in regard to the internship program, I noticed like a lack of diversity. And so with that, it's, kind of accounting for, what is the current state of affairs, and, trying to acknowledge, like, is this really a problem? Is this, what was it like before, in the past, before I started working here? And actually getting into the metrics and the numbers of, how many interns do we have? What schools are they coming from? What is the gender breakdown, the ethnic breakdown, et cetera? And then presenting it to others within the organization that have an impact on who's chosen as an intern, and then trying to kind of set the stage of, is this a good representation of, let's say, even our fan base or the Bay Area? This is kind of the community that we're serving. And so really trying to open the conversation of, maybe we should approach it a different way when we go to filling jobs. And can we all agree that it's a good idea to set a goal of, maybe we want to try to bring more women and people of color into this program, across the board, regardless of what department they'll be working in. And so with that, I think it's kind of like identifying the problem, starting the conversation, which, especially like for me, someone who's new to the organization, that could be potentially uncomfortable because I haven't developed any real rapport with my own department or other department leads, but it was something I was passionate about. And so going from there to try to set a strategy of how do we go about changing the makeup of the candidates that are considered and hired for the internship program, and then kind of really educating all the stakeholders onto the idea of, like, here's the problem, here's how we work towards it, and reminding them that an internship should really be about creating opportunities for college students. And so, it's not just about like, oh, we'll hire the smartest person from the elite school. You'll find smart people there too, but you'll also find them in the community colleges that maybe we aren't talking about or haven't targeted in the past. And so year after year, tracking, have we made improvements? And it's like, checking to those milestones. And so I think that's important. So that's at least an example for me that I can think of.
I can go. So I think for me, just for context of like why I created Dreamers Roadmap is based on my personal story. So I'm an immigrant from Mexico, right? So I think for me, as a first generation immigrant from Mexico, there's like already all kinds of institutions that are just kind of stacked against me for me to fail. I am the youngest of 11 children, the first one in my family to just really kind of go through the educational system here in the United States. So for me, it wasn't like, I was kind of like the first generation hybrid, kind of also immigrant and undocumented on top of that. So I was kind of doing the first of everything in my family, which was really challenging. And probably a lot of y'all are also first generation and know what I'm talking about. But for me, what happened, or kind of what shifted everything, was my junior year of high school. I think my whole life I was aware that I was an immigrant, but I wasn't aware that I was undocumented. And basically what that meant for me pursuing higher education. I've always been super passionate about education. I always knew that I wanted to go to college. I kind of like would always tell my mom since I was little, like, I'm going to go to school and I'm going to get us a house and we're going to be fine. Just because I feel like there was so much instability for us growing up that I'm like, the only way to get stability is to get a college education. So I was like super focused on doing that. So when I applied for FAFSA, like all of my friends, and this was, I don't even know what year it was, but it was still paper. So I'm aging myself here. I got a letter in the mail basically saying, yo, like, like, cool, like we got your application, but you're missing a section, the Social Security part. So then by this time, my mom and my dad had self-deported to Mexico. So I hit up my mom, like, hey, Ama, like, I need my Social Security number. And she's like, oh, pues no, you don't have one. So for me, this was kind of the moment where I realized like, okay, I can't finish this application that I was hoping was going to help me pay for school like the rest of my friends. So what's my option? What's like plan B? Because there has to be a way. I go to my counselor, tell her my situation. I'm like, yo, like, you know, my grades, you know, my basically like all my extracurriculars, you know, that anywhere that I apply, like I'm going to get in, like, but I have obviously no money. I was like this little 17-year-old kid by myself, both parents self-deported. And she's like, people like you don't go to college. So I think for me, like it was like a physical and literal kind of barrier, like institution that just one either wasn't aware that people like me existed. There just hadn't been like enough information or education to educators about options for folks who were undocumented trying to pursue higher education. And this was also, I graduated in 2008, and this was also like around like the time where it wasn't like the cool thing to be outspoken about your status, and like I'm undocumented and afraid like was not the thing. Like you still didn't talk about it. And when I found out all of this stuff, I was like, well, I don't think I told anybody until I officially came out back in like 2014 that I was undocumented. So a lot of my high school friends, like my teachers, like no one knew. And they were like, wait, what? Like what, how? Like I couldn't even tell. And it's like, well, yeah, I couldn't even tell either. Like I didn't even know, you know, but it was this kind of like institutional barrier that like really derailed a lot of my plan for my stability, for my family stability, for my mental health, just so many things that I had to navigate. And for me, it was like when I graduated high school in this situation, I'm like, I'm probably the only person that's undocumented trying to go to college. And what am I going to do? And little did I know that there was like just a lot of us, you know, there was a lot of us going through the same thing, but nowhere, social media wasn't a thing. So we couldn't really congregate or group somewhere where we can talk to each other about what was going on. Yes. Can I have one candy? Yes, you can have one candy. Go. Sorry, pause. Go get a candy. Come on. Oh, Tia Sandra can give you the candy. Sorry, this is all being recorded. I'm so sorry. This is kind of like what's like the reality of 2020. It's just kind of like in between like mom, entrepreneur, everything de todo un poco. So thank you for your patience. Like my kid's probably going to keep coming in. But yeah, so it was that, right? Like it was like, what do I do about it now that I know that it's not just me? And how can I fix this problem so that other people that come after me don't have to get derailed as far out as I did? And this is where Dreamers Roadmap was born, to allow people to know that these resources do exist, that we can go to college, that the money is there. People will tell you you can't, but this tool will tell you you can. And we will try to push it out like by word of mouth or like just people, that it is possible for us to go to school, you know? So I think for me, I took it like literally upon myself to try to fix the problem and push against that institutional barrier that continues to try to push us out. And I love the name of Akeem's organization, Hidden Geniuses, because I was on a panel earlier this year with a really good friend of mine, some of y'all might know, Tunde from Street Code. And we were talking about that, right? Like how when we lose these brilliant people of color in these low income communities, they are hidden geniuses that like that the world or corporate or education or whatever don't get the opportunity to tap into because they didn't have that information or that kind of mentor or tool to guide them to the resources that would have gotten them there. So I'll stop there.
Sarahi, thank you. You basically got my segue because here it comes. Yeah, this is a tough one, and you know I can relate to you in a way that you know these institutions were built and created and stacked up against people that look like me. Yet you know we built these institutions, and I mean brick by brick, right, hour by hour. However, I do have a social security number and a driver's license, but I still am denied access to those systems. So it's not a you thing or a me thing, it's a them thing, right? And when I call out them, it's the system, it's the white supremacist ideology that is designed or has been designed to oppress people of color. So definitely want to call that out and say that with no social security and with the social security, I still didn't get access, right? I applaud you for your courageousness for speaking out. And, you know, the question is, how do we know when things are being done? Well, I can tell you right now, the systems that we're talking about, from academics to financials, we're still being pushed out at a higher rate than we've ever seen before. You talk about the Bay Area, Oakland to be exact, 10, 15 years ago, I could have bought a 3-4 bedroom house for, you know, $200,000 minimum at the max, right? That same house is $600,000, $700,000 now. A house that's across the street from McClymonds High School, which they call Victorian, in 2001, $150,000. In 2020, that house sold for $1.2 million. So you name it, there are still systems that are in place that are still keeping us down and oppressed, which is why I love the work that I do from my 5 to midnight and my 9 to 5. And that's because nobody really knows how to support you but you, right? And what I mean that is, you don't know how to support your culture unless you're from the culture. And what's missing in some of these institutions is our cultural input, right? And if we don't have any cultural input, we can't have any cultural impact. And I think that's why historically we've been pushed out. And so the work that I do with the hidden geniuses is to teach them and train them to get them ready to navigate this society as Black male youth that will come up against traps and snares that are designed to keep them on the margin. But we're giving them skills to become a part of the norm, to create their own norms. It reminds me of a conversation during the civil rights movement where, you know, Martin Luther King, he's like, you know, let us get a seat at your table, right? Like we want to get there. We want to sit down. And Malcolm X was like, the hell with your table. Give us the resources so we can build our own. And that's kind of like where we are with the Hidden Genius Project. We're giving our young men the skills and resources to build their own thing. And I think that's where we have to go when you think of the large corporations in Silicon Valley, which you might call it, what they say, a stone's throw from you all's university. They have to understand that we don't necessarily want to be a part of your data, the diversity and inclusion statistics, because no matter how much you try, how much you pay us, when we get there, there is no place for us to land because the culture does not look like us, which is why I appreciate Sergio's comment about the Warriors. I know tons of people that work for the Warriors. Matter of fact, I'm on the panel with a few tomorrow for our basketball decoded event thing. So working with folks like Jasmine Villanueva, who's a young woman of color, and all throughout the organization, right? So I see the Warriors recognize that, and they also generously grant organizations like the Hidden Genius Project. But one thing I would like to take to the next level is, even though these institutions have been created to keep us historically on the margin, there is one thing that I really love, and it's my 5 to midnight, and that's helping people form corporations, right? The corporation don't have no color. They don't know if you Black or white, if you got a social security number or not. You pay your franchise tax board taxes, you pay your IRS 1040, and you're good to go. And at that point, that's where we can begin to see more gains in our community when we teach corporate ownership and corporate responsibility, because then we have access to so many financial products that me as a Black man with a low credit score may not have access to, or an undocumented citizen who has no social security number. They don't care. You got this corporation, it's fine. And it's so genius when you think about it, because the word corporation comes from the word corpus, right? And that root word is corpo, which is corpse, body, right? And so this living thing is a piece of paper that gives you access to places that you would never get access to based on the color of your skin. And now that totally eliminates it. And so that's the reason why I love the work that I do from 9 to 5, and the work that I do from 5 to midnight is giving us access by means of corporate development and entrepreneurship. And at that point, you realize, those large corporations realize, wow, we missed out on those kids in those communities, those Black and brown kids who are brilliant, and we wish we could have had them in our corporations. But the reality is there's no room for us, so we just need to create our own. And that's how we'll begin to regain control in economic.
Awesome. Yeah, I can tell we're already off to a great start. Thank you for all of your insights. So this next question is for everyone here, or all of the panelists. So at all of your respective positions, you have to work with or are employed by institutions that have made commitments towards improving diversity, equity, and inclusion work. And so as the name of our speaker series suggests, it's one thing to talk the talk, but another to walk the walk. How have you all found success in regards to holding institutions accountable and making sure that they are change agents and not just talking the talk?
I'm sorry, I'm still warm because that's where I was getting ready to go, Josh. So thank you. You got me fired up. You can't give the preacher space because he gonna preach. Okay, just understand that. I'm going to my seat, but then I'll preach for 10 more minutes. No, that's a great question, Josh. That's the thing that infuriates me the most, is that I really, like my colleague, my ED, you want to recognize him, Brandon Nicholson, just joined us. Brandon, they said keep the camera off, but you're welcome to hang out. But I want to recognize him. The thing that infuriates me the most is these large organizations that talk about diversity and inclusion. And you've done the studies, you've got the data. Facebook looks like this, Google looks like that, Apple is just that, right? And I always tell people, you cannot expect Zuckerberg to get rid of his homies because he just won't do it, because then that's what's equity for them, right? Just because you want to hire me and I may be Black, male, queer, Muslim, right? And I'm trying to get my D&I numbers up. That's not going to happen. So the better thing to do again is let's give them our time, let's give them our resources, and let's incubate them and help them bring their companies to fruition and their products to market so that they can then hire people that look like them. When I ask our hidden geniuses, who are the first people you're going to hire, they say, I'm hiring my brothers from my cohort. So you can't knock them for hiring what they know or what they're close to, right? And that's the same thing with the D&I. But here's the other thing that infuriates me with that D&I initiative is that now you've done the data, you see the study say that you need to make an institutional change, but then I come and bring my hidden geniuses to your facility for a walkthrough and the field trip. And I say, well, we want to meet the engineers that look like us. And the head of your D&I looks like the first 40 presidents of this country. Like that's telling me you're missing the mark, right? And so when people say D&I, I tend to cringe, but then it's not necessarily that D&I is not a good strategy. It's just that once you get the data and understand it, what do you do with it? Don't bring me the milquetoast anymore. Bring me the truth. Recognize what you've done, and bring my young men in and show them. Don't show us in the kitchen. That's the other thing. We go to the kitchen, there we are, Black and brown, cooking, security. But when we ask for the engineers, we can't find them. When you show me the head of D&I, again, looks like the first 40 presidents of this country. And that's definitely a problem. It's an institutional thing. It's no different than redlining. It's no different than voting rights. It's a company, an institution keeping individuals on the margin. But what they're missing, though, and Sarahi said something about this earlier, is there is untapped talent and untapped potential in the community. Earlier on in our startup, we'd always say there's gold in them streets, just like the gold rush would say there's gold in them hills. And we really mean that. And if you're from Texas, you might say it's gold in that ground, right? That's the oil. But in these communities, there's so much talent. And the thing that our young people possess the most is perseverance, right? They are born in COVID. born in technology. They don't know what the Dewey Index system is at the library. So they've had to adjust to rapid growth and rapid pace. Meanwhile, these companies are scaling based on their usage, but not one time are they stopping to ask our young folks, at least, how does this work for you? Or what would you do different to make this product more adaptable to a larger part of your community? So there are different ways diversity can be done, and there are different ways that inclusion can be had. But I think it starts with having a goal and a purpose. And when you talk about accountability, I think the proof is in the data, right? When you talk about accountability, the proof is when I come and I only see me in the kitchen, right? And that's a problem. And I just want, if anybody's there who's thinking about working at one of the firms in Silicon Valley, I want you to do that. But when you're there, think about when you're on your inside, what kind of power can you attain on the inside to make sure that some of those resources are going back to the community that you left? Because when you leave the community up for grabs. And that's another problem. Don't leave the community up for grabs. Find power in that company and give back. That's another accountability strategy that we can have. And that's another accountability strategy that we can use. We infiltrate these spaces, we grab power, and we dish it back to the communities where we came from and continue to bring our people up one by one.
I think that for me, like, well, first, like Akeem, like, yes, OMG, like, I'm glad you went. So, like, yes, you were fired up and ready to go on that. And it's so true. I think the word that you're using and that I keep hearing over and over is like spot on. And the word is infuriating, right? Because we are the people that still are living in the streets. We see the gold, like we are the gold. We're surrounded by the gold, but no one else sees it, right? Because there's like, it's like you were saying, that red lining and that like kind of glass ceiling, whatever you want to call it. And that perspective that you gave of the whole, like Mark Zuckerberg with the homies will hire the homies. I'm like, that's so true. Like even with my organization, like I'm hiring all my homies, like you best believe, you know what I mean? And I get it, but it's like at the level that they're at, that's like, that needs to be dismantled, right? And like, it's kind of how you were saying too, because it's like, it's gonna get to a point where it's just gonna be stale, because it's all the same homies with the same everything. So nothing's ever gonna change. So that's when things start to go down, like, oh, why isn't this working? Well, maybe ask a brown person, or maybe ask a black person, or you know what, like maybe ask somebody else in like Latin America or another part of the world. There's smart people all over, not just here in the Silicon Valley. Ask outside. And I think that's one of the big issues, right? That oftentimes we just like, well, this is literally a bubble that people think that this is the world, and it's not, right? So I think for me personally, how I kind of try to keep institutions like technology, especially big corporate companies, accountable, is that on a regular year, I travel the country and I speak, I share my story about what I do and things like that. Oftentimes, like a lot of the executive folks are in the room, sometimes not. A lot of the times it's the Latino ERGs who invite me, know me, find out about me through another homie, and then give me the gig. And then I'm in there. You know, so I like legit, like I straight up, I'm like, y'all need to, it's basically what you were saying. Akeem's like, y'all need to throw the ladder back down and let people come up, because y'all, and it doesn't matter whether you're white or black or brown or Asian or whatever, you got up here because someone helped you get up here. There was some kind of privilege somewhere, a door that someone opened for you. Again, whether it was a homie or my dad's friend from college, or like literally a homie that works in HR, like Sergio was like, hey man, I know, I see somebody from like the hood that's like hella smart, that has everything that you're looking for. Here's an opportunity. But that's the thing, right? Like we always have to refer when we see an opening. And in the Latino culture, I don't know, y'all can help me out, because I'm like, I feel like I'm ESL a little still. But it's envidia. Is that like envy?
Envious. Yeah.
Envious? And that's got to stop. Like, I feel like my generation down were not as envidiosos as like our parents and like tios and like grandparents. But there's like this thing where like, oh no, and I'm here and like, look at you and you stay there. I worked my way here. You figure it out. It's like, bro, come on now. Like, nah. Like, again, I go back to the same thing. Someone helped you get to where you're at. And yeah, sure, you want to be quiet about who helped you get up there, but you did not get there alone. And that's what infuriates me. That it's like, there's no need for you to feel that there's only room for you to grow. And there's a really dear friend of mine in LA, Ana Flores, that she has this beautiful, I talk about her all the time, where it's like, when one grows, we all grow. And like, for me, that's beautiful, because like, it's true. Like, like I said, like, I started this little kind of nonprofit out of like my personal story. I've got my homies through here as interns, and now they're out there in the world, you know, doing these big things. And I was like, yes. They're like, yeah. And it's because I got the internship with you that got me the experience, even though I had the degree. And that's a whole other beast of its own, right? Like, all these brown and black kids go to school, they get the grades, they graduate with honors, and then they go look for the job, and they're like, oh wait, but you have no experience. You did no internships, like you did no this. And it's like, wait a minute, but I have the degree. Isn't that what you're asking me for? Like, isn't that what society is telling you to do? It's like this cookie cutter process of success. And then we're kind of missed these opportunities, right? Like, whether, again, we're first generation, we just don't have the hookups at the firms. Like, we don't have, or we missed the deadline because they told us hella last minute. Like, it's all these missed opportunities that brown and black people are missing out on. And when these white folks graduate, they get the job right away because they got those internships in between those in those summers. They got all that experience like at after hours, like my homie Akeem, from that like 9 to midnight. You know what I mean? They're putting in those hours. So I think for me, it's super important to continue to kind of hone into my little organization, keep getting the homies, funnel them in through here to get that experience and get them in the door with that experience and that degree into these spaces of privilege and power. But I tell them every time they come through and they leave and they get that job, don't forget to bring 1 or 2 people with you and keep going and keep going. And whoever the 2 people that you get in, tell them to get 2 more. It's kind of like that pyramid scheme, but in our favor. You know what I mean? Like, let's get those people in, because the power is there. The smarts are there. We're here. We're not going anywhere. This is our community. And Silicon Valley, yes, is getting expensive as hell, but we have the right to make those dollars that these white men are making. And we're gonna make it, but we have to keep them accountable and ourselves accountable too, though. That when we get those positions of power, we are pulling our own community up with us and not kind of leave them stranded out there like, oh, I made it, see ya. So I'll wrap it up right there.
Love what I'm hearing from everyone, and definitely agree with that, with everything that I've heard. I mean, there's so many ways to answer this question. I'm trying to think like, what can I add to what's already been said that's so great? You know, it's like me when joining the Warriors about 4.5, 5 years ago, one of the first questions many people asked me as a new hire was like, who do you know? Like, how'd you get in? And I thought, you know, I kind of understood it, you know, the first, second time. But a number of people kept asking me, like, I don't know anyone. It's like, there was a job online and I applied. That's the only way, well, that's the main way I've gotten every job in my life. Now, granted, I've had opportunities too. Like when I was in high school, I didn't have to work minimum wage because my father hooked me up with a laborer job, you know, working as a gardener for the university. So I was making double minimum wage, way more than my other friends were during their summer jobs. But like, you know, that was kind of the extent of my social capital or like, you know, hookups, right? Because after that, it's like, I didn't have any access to anything, you know? So there's, you know, for me, it's just like constant conversations. Luckily with, you know, normal times outside of a pandemic, we're doing tons of hiring at all levels, entry level to executive level. And so it's always having conversations with the hiring manager in terms of like developing expectations in terms of the ideal profile that they're looking for. But at the same time, also trying to kind of to challenge them to open up their mind and to consider backgrounds that don't necessarily fit into their idea of the ideal candidate they're looking for. Because it's so easy to rely on, oh, you know, we'll be we'll be objective and we'll just hire the quote unquote best. And the best go to these schools, gets these GPAs and study these in these departments. But the tricky thing is, I went to these elite schools. I went to UC Berkeley. I went to NYU in Madrid. But at the same time, like, yeah, if I'm interviewing for a job, I'm going to name drop. I'm going to talk it up, what the eliteness of these schools, how challenging they were. Day to day, whatever, doesn't really come up in conversation because it's not necessary. But I also know that, tons of people went to these schools and it doesn't really mean too much. So it's having those conversations with my peers and with hiring managers, letting them know, like, well, who historically has had access to these institutions, who has access to internships. It's so easy to, if we're going to hire a marketing intern for the Golden State Warriors, well, who's already been a marketing intern at another great institution, whether in sports, entertainment, or the Googles of the world. But if they already have that, they're already set up. Why don't we have our internship also be, not only internships, but it should be an opportunity to tap into other talent, people who have what it takes, but they haven't necessarily had that opportunity at an entry-level role or an internship with an organization like ours. So now this is our opportunity. And so it's been very fulfilling to be able to, I'm not telling people to hire people that aren't qualified. No, it's just like, well, have you really thought about this person? And wouldn't it be good to add, some spice and character to this department or to this organization? And some of that is, this person goes to a junior college or this person goes to a state school. One is not necessarily better than the other. And so it's just kind of like always challenging, oh, you think that person's better? Or I noticed that, with the female candidates that we've interviewed, you've kind of used adjectives like lacking confidence or more quiet. Yet for the male candidates, they're, they've got it what it takes. They're a straight shooter. And so it's, it's education, it's training, even going into the process. Here are common biases that we want to get in front of. And so, but it's something that causes or requires constant conversation, constant reminding, because my duty is, I've had a couple of great mentors that for whatever reason have always been women of color. And so for me, it's like, why did they choose to help me? They saw something in me and I didn't necessarily have those internships or that great, career trajectory, just something that I kind of put together over time. And so just knowing that, I feel obligated to, keep an open eye and to help create opportunities for women and people of color, the people that helped me. And I think that, I think we're better off because of that. And so that's something that I've really dedicated my career to. But, sometimes it's easier said than done. And sometimes it can get awkward, but they're just going to have to deal with that.
Thank you guys so much for that awesome perspective on all these different topics there. Kind of a follow up on this question, what in your experience is the best way to do that giving back, like to transfer that knowledge back into the community? How do you be a good mentor? How do you be a role model for these people once you've made it there?
I think there are, just as there are multiple ways you probably get to your dwelling in the evening, right? You may drive the long way, you may drive the short way. There are multiple ways that we can do this type of work. And one model that works really well for the Hidden Genius Project is called Cascading Mentorship. And what it is we have our intensive immersion, which is 15 months, 2 full summers, 1 full school year, upwards of 800 hours. Young folks are with us just learning entrepreneurship, computer science, and leadership. And when I mean leadership, not like civics, that civics is kind of weaved in there, but leadership as in, what's a social construct, and things like that, and how to navigate society, and play with the cards you were dealt, right? And then after that, they have opportunities to become what we call youth educators, or YEs for short. And what they do then in that capacity is they take everything that they've learned from us adult mentors, they become the mentors and go back and mentor other youth. And so it just keeps going, it keeps going, and it keeps going. That's how you give it back. And so one of those young men that's coming up in particular is Isaiah Martin, who is a senior at an Ivy League school, but still makes time to give back to the community as a youth educator. So he's been a youth educator all while, pursuing his computer science degree at Dartmouth, right? Just another example. So Isaiah can go wherever he wants right now. He's got the golden ticket. As Sergio might say, he got the plug, right? He got it, right? He can go wherever he wants to go. He's got the elite school check. He's got the Ivy League education check. He's got the Ivy League network check. He can go wherever he wants to go, but instead he decides to come back and work with us and give back to the youth at the Hidden Genius Project. So that's one way, is to tap into the youth potential and the youth power, because the best way to get to a youth is really through another youth. And when they see him in this position of, semi-authority, but maybe a few years older, that is more attainable and tangible to them than they see us here on this panel in our older adult age, having had life experiences. We're like the old heads, and, I'm just in my mid-40s. But, to a 16-year-old, that's hella old, right? I'm just 36, but I'm hella old to them. But when you tap the power of the youth, it works. But the support to that is their families too, right? Making sure that the families understand what it is that their young folks are getting into. Making sure their families support the learning. So first support them in their learning and through their immersion process, and then support them to taking advantage of these employment opportunities. So we actually go back and employ our young men after they come through. So you talk about giving back, and eventually they'll put us out of a job. I think that's the point. But that is another way. And then lastly is, building community collaborations. So like the Hidden Genius Project hooks up with Sarahi and her group, and it's like, how can we support each other to grow? How can we work together to grow our network? How can we work together to support the people that we work for, our demographic, our constituency, the people that depend on us the most? And so that's kind of how you do that. And then, we holler at Sergio, who's at the Warriors, and, for every three-pointer, that's $1,000, right? He tells us about this grant application that we may be able to submit, that for every three-pointer, I think it was $500. One season they ran it up, broke the record. I think we're granted about $50,000 from that. But how else we wouldn't have known about that grant had we not had inside information. So you take the inside information at the corporate level. Here's this grant opportunity that you might want to apply for. I know the guy who might be sitting on the decisions committee who can help you strengthen up your application. If it's like that, then we collaborate with other CBOs and figure out how we can support each other to grow our constituency and grow their capacity. And then we leverage the youth in our networks, because they'll go out and reach other youth and empower other youth.
Yeah, I think for me, you have to find the time to be accessible and approachable for your community. So for example, like I went to high school in LA, but if I would have stayed in the Bay Area, my high school would have been Sequoia High School. And I'm super proud of Sequoia High School because they created a dream club, and they have like a scholarship fund for dreamers, because again, we don't qualify for nothing. So it all has to be privately funded and fundraised. So I go to their annual dinner like every year. I invite a bunch of my homies. I stay in touch with the students. Like I share my story, they share theirs. Like, and it's just kind of like this. It's sometimes I feel like almost they're mentoring me, not me like mentoring them, because of so much like in common that our stories have. But for them, like they get excited with the whole like Forbes thing and White House. I'm like, yeah, man, like look at me, I was hell undocumented and I did all of this. You can do this and more. So then like I think it's that, like, right, like meeting them where they're at, like really having empathy, and then giving them that little glimpse of hope, and that there is a light at the end of the tunnel, right? Like there is so much that we've been fighting for hundreds of years in this country, for equity and for inclusion and social justice. And it's like, look, as long as there's white men making all these legislative decisions, all of these policies, that's not going to change. So what y'all need to do, and we have a saying in Spanish, it's called ponte las pilas, like get it together, get that education in the pocket, and go be that person that takes that white man seat, and go change those laws, and go change those legislations, and go be that president, go be that governor, go be that board chair, because that's the only way that we're going to see real change, right? Like I said, we've lost so many leaders like Martin Luther King. We've lost, like so many just people, amazing people along the way in this fight. And it just continues to be a fight, right? I'm like, wait, when did this happen? And what just happened to Breonna Taylor? And what year are we in? Like, it's like it doesn't stop, right? And it's not gonna stop unless we stop it. And we have to stand literally in the middle. So for me, again, like I'm like a super advocate for like get that education in. And like, I don't know, I think like for me this whole year, the biggest quote or thing that has stuck in my mind is education is the most powerful weapon. You have to change the world. And that's what we try to emphasize to our students, right? It's like, we're warriors. We are here to fight the good fight. Get that weapon, get the sharpest, like strongest, most like volatile weapon, which is your education degrees, not violence. And come with it, like come with it and come prepared. And we have the capacity. Again, like I feel like we're preaching to the choir, right? Where it's like, but I just hope that y'all, like younger folks that are in school, that are taking these positions, you really do also think to use your skills in technology and engineering and marketing, whatever kind of field that it is that you're in, to create the change. Like literally, it sounds super cliche, but to really create the change that you want to see, because we have that power. I think oftentimes as people of color, we're raised to think that we're consumers, and we're not. Like we are way more than that. We're creators. We have that capacity. I think like as Latinos and people from the hood, we have just so many ideas because we go through so much crap that we're like, oh, if something like this existed, life would be better. It's like, bro, make it a business. Get a couple of your homies to save your money. Stop going to Starbucks for a cool minute. Save that money. Get that corporation with homie Akeem is going to get you that hookup incorporated. And build that business, like stop letting the white man take our ideas and making millions. Like we have the ideas because we've gone through the problems. So use your life experience, use your challenges and what you're going through, what you've gone through, because trust me, you're not the only person that is going through it or has gone through it. And there's thousands, if not millions of people around the world who want the same solution, that one day in the shower, in your bed, in your dream, you're like, bro, if this company existed, or if this product existed, if this tool existed, that would be so much easier, or life would be so much doper. Dude, make it happen. So that's kind of like my thing here. Like, just do it. Don't be afraid. Take that risk. Get your homies to if you need to go on a tanda, do it. I don't know what that is in English. It's basically a bunch of your homies lending each other money in a cycle. But it's possible, y'all. Like it really is, like coming from a brown girl with little to nothing, hella undocumented, got this money, built this company, helping hella people now make it to college and getting these jobs. So we out here.
Can't really add much to that. That was great. But I agree. It's about access to information, and that's education. So for me, it's just sharing the information that I have regarding that comes from my personal experience and my professional experience. I didn't have an example to share this with me. So because my work centers around hiring people and finding the right fit, then my job obligation is to help people like me, and even of course people not like me, but from a similar situation, first generation, to go to college, child of an immigrant. It's, how do I get my resume in shape? How do I present myself during an interview? What should a cover letter include? What are my possibilities in terms of like career trajectory? And then, should my major go in line with that? And so, again, I never thought I was going to be working, let alone for, Golden State Warriors, but especially not in human resources or talent acquisition, because I had no idea what that meant. I had two examples. My parents, who provided everything that I needed, had a good upbringing. But, it was like, am I going to work outside like my father with machines and tools, or am I going to work inside and have an office job like my mother? So those were the two possibilities. But of course, while going through college, my father's like, you can use your head for your work. You don't have to work outside like me. It's just going to be harder for you. You're part of a new generation. Like, the expectations are higher. And, I didn't come to this country for you to have the same job as me. You're supposed to do better. So, just kind of sharing that with my community in terms of giving the learnings that I have. It's like, learn from my mistakes. I've wasted so much time with cover letters and resumes, and things were a little harder because I didn't have an internship because I needed to work instead. But here's what you can do. Here's how you can sell your experience. What do you do outside of class or outside of work? That should be going on your resume. You need to start to think about your work and life experiences differently and learn how to translate that to on paper, and then also verbally when you're selling yourself during these interviews. So it's all about information and education.
Well, thank you guys so much for this. We're going to move on to the closing statements. So yeah, if you could each take about a minute or so and leave us with some final thoughts you had on this really enlightening conversation, that would be greatly appreciated. We're going to start with Akeem for that.
I feel like I just was discriminated on because my first and last name are A and B, and it's cool though. It's all good. No. Story though, my parents did give me A and B as a last name, so I wouldn't be at the end of the line when we were lined up alphabetical order. So I think that is a little privilege in the naming. So I've named all my children A and B just to give them a shot to get looked at. And that's just sad to think we live in a society where your name is, going to matter how people look at you or view you. But, in closing, I wanted to kind of share that and start off on that note. In closing, I appreciate the candidness and the transparency of this conversation. I appreciate the vulnerability, and then ultimately I appreciate the opportunity. I hope to do this again someday because I think it allows us as panelists a moment to reflect and decompress from all the work that we do throughout the week. And it allows us to share those experiences, which makes those experiences a lot more real. So where we thought we were going through it, realizing at the same time our going through it might have been a blessing or a boost of energy to somebody else. And it reminds me of a quote that it's kind of stuck with me throughout undergrad from Frederick Douglass, who said, if there's no struggle, there's no progress. And so every day we struggle for progress, right? And it may not be the progress that we seek or desire, but it may be the progress for somebody else. It also takes me back to, a biblical story where Abraham was one of the prophets in the earlier Bibles was tasked with taking the people to the promised land. But because of whatever the creator thought, he was like, you can't come, but you're going to get people ready to go, right? And it's just one of those things. That's where we are in this time and in our generation. We may not see the results or the progress from our struggle, but we are the ones who are getting people prepared to go. Hopefully we can see it, but if we don't, just know and rest assured that the work that all of us are doing right now, even the organizers of this panel, we're doing work It's our struggle, and it's for the future's progress. And so I just wanted to leave you all with that. And just, if you don't remember anything I said tonight, just remember this, that there is nothing within us that is in vain, right? We've experienced the struggles, we know the solutions to the struggles, right? And that can turn out to be a solution for somebody else's struggle. And then you add the engineering department at Santa Clara, and now you scale, right? And so I wanted to just thank my fellow panelists again, and thank the organizers, and hopefully you have us again. I do want to drop a plug off. The Hidden Genius Project is having Brothers Code this weekend, December 12th from 10 to 1. Please check it out, brotherscode.org. Male, female, black, white, short, tall, yellow, or green. I don't care what you look like. Just come out, enjoy, come and engage. Come see what our young folks have to bring to the table. They'll be leading all the youth-facing sessions. From how to make a beat to how to make a rap, from how to take your ideas and entrepreneurial and scale it, right? How to build sustainable businesses too that support the community. And then I have scheduled and created a lot of adult-facing content you might be interested in. I have the folks from Williams-Sonoma and Pottery Barn. They're going to come and talk about how to repurpose your space during shelter in place. So a lot of us have become teachers and home educators, so they're going to tell you how to use what you have to repurpose the space. I've also got a young medical doctor, Dr. Byron Young, whose focus is on community health and mental well-being. He's going to talk to us parents and folks that are working with youth and young people of how to recognize when our young folks are going through it, and some things we might be able to do to help them come out of it. Because in these times, mental health is so important, and our young folks are the ones suffering. So please come out to Brothers Code. If you've got a young person, send them to the youth-facing sessions. If you're an older person, come and check out the adult-facing sessions, and that's brotherscode.org. And I'll place the link in the chat for everybody. But then just, again, thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Akeem. I definitely feel you in going first. I have AA initials, so I apologize for putting you in the front of the ringer. Yeah, I get now. In order to switch things up, I'm actually going to go to Sergio next.
I'll keep it short. I just think that education is key, and that's not only formal education, like through a university, but it's also about being a life learner and pushing yourself to learn about, what it is that you want to do in terms of a career, but it's also about learning about others. And as you progress and make your way towards where you want to go, it's important to establish goals and try to meet those goals. But also it's even more important not to lose sight of where you come from and of all the work that came before you and the people that helped you. And just lastly, strength in numbers. It's important to, your progress really doesn't mean much if you're not in turn helping people. And that should be people like you, because, like even this whole topic, like diversity and inclusion, yeah, you might be able to make it to that organization or that company that you've always wanted to. But once you're there, do you feel included? And so really that's only going to happen if there's more people that look like you. So thanks again, everyone. Really have enjoyed this conversation.
Thank you so much, Sergio. And finally, I guess, Sarahi.
Thank you so much. What an honor to be on this panel with y'all and to have both Josh and is it AJ?
Yes.
Right? Okay, yes. I was gonna say AA, but I was like, wait, no, because there's two A's in your name. I was like, no, it's not AA for sure. And then we have AB, lots of A's going on. I love it. But yeah, so just thank you. Thank you. I'm just like this whole year, and I think like my life, like I've tried to live in a space of gratitude. So I think just remember that. Like I think oftentimes it's really difficult to make the time to sit back and think who helped you get to where you're at. if you're in a good state. So it's kind of like my mom would always say, right? Like, she's like, if you're alive and breathing and healthy, thank God and thank whoever got you to there. Right. So when I was little, it was like God and my mom who would feed me and clothe me and had a house, like a shelter over my head. But as you get older and you start progressing in your career, like really take the time. Was it a high school teacher? Was it an elementary teacher? Was it a church pastor? Was it your neighbor? Like who got you through those difficult days? Who was that mentor? Who was that wise elder in your community? I remember there was this older man. I was probably like 10 years old. We called him Don George. His name was George. It was like this black man that lived right in front with his wife. And this is just kind of going on a whole personal level, but I love old people. Like, for some weird reasons, I was really little. Like I gravitate towards old people. And for me, it was just always so fun because they're full of stories and I love stories. My dad was a storyteller and he'd always have all these wild stories to tell me and all these, like, he had this huge tree of lemons and I'd help him pick the lemons. And he'd always tell me all these stories and all these kind of like advice and things like that. And he'd always be like, and what do you say? And I'm like, gracias. Cause that's also like a Latino thing. Like, it's like, how do you ask for things? Like, please, and then thank you. And he's like, and remember to say that to your mom. And I'm like, why does he always tell me that? Like, of course I'm going to say thank you to my mom every day. But it's just kind of like that, right? Like just the smallest little things. And I think for me, like his story and his life, like remind me of like the small things that brought me joy. Like I loved going like across the street to his house to pick lemons. And I loved hearing his stories. And even like, I guess at 10, I was having bad days. Like I would go over to his house and I would feel better. So who were your Don Georges like in your life? And if you can write them a handwritten letter right now with COVID and distance, everything, you have the time probably. I challenge you to take that time to handwrite a note, a thank you note to those people who brought you to where you are today, whether that's your parents, again, like your mentors, your teachers, your neighbors, because at the end of the day, y'all, like, I know we say this a lot in the immigrant advocacy space, and you're not alone. And you're really not. Like, this year has been super challenging for the Black and Brown community the most, because we've been affected the most. We are the essential workers. We are the backbone of this country. And we're always put in the front. We're always the first ones to get hit with the worst and the most. But we're resilient. So don't forget that. You're not alone. We're resilient. Kind of like Sergio said, don't forget where you come from. Don't forget your roots. Don't forget your language, your culture. Teach your children that and embrace it. Because at the end of the day, like this whole kind of diversity and inclusion thing, like if you Americanize yourself, and this is again as an immigrant, you start losing who you are and forgetting, and you're in this kind of space of pride, and you're not really going to get anywhere with that. Don't try to blend into the white world. Don't be like them. That's not fun. We're fun. The way we were built, the way we were made, our differences makes us fun and makes it worthwhile. So don't try to change and don't try to fit in somewhere that you're not. Be true to yourself, because if not, you're going to work for the rest of your life and feeling miserable trying to fit into something that you're not. So that's the other challenge, right? Once you get these degrees in the bag, once you start networking and trying to get these jobs, and like Sergio said, once you get to that space and you don't feel included, take it upon yourself to make it feel inclusive. And bring those people of color, bring that culture with you, bring that language with you, and make that space for yourself and others. Because if you feel that type of way, I'm pretty sure other people that look like you feel that same way too. So with that, y'all, let's do this. We got this. Blessings to all of you. And just remember, you're not alone. We're all here to back you up. We want to see you succeed, because when one grows, we all grow. Thank you.
Sarahi the Truth. I just got, that's your nickname now. Sarahi the Truth. I have one more thing to add too, if it's cool. I wanted to just say that I think it would be, healthy for us to have some conversation. Again, it doesn't have to be streamed or broadcast, but I think there's some things that we touched on that we really didn't get enough time to dive in to. and could be because of the live streaming audience. But I would love for us to kind of come back and just maybe just have tea over Zoom and just chat over somebody's lunch break and continue to share ideas, because I felt a great vibe and a great energy from this space tonight. The candidness and the transparency, I couldn't ask for more, but I also think there are ways that we can support each other personally as well as organizationally as well. So definitely interested in having deeper conversations with you all. And that was that.
Thank you so much to all our panelists. Again, I'm going to pass it off to Josh because Akeem, I think you're in luck. He's going to talk about what's happening after this panel is done.
So yeah, thank you all again. We really want to thank our panelists for making time today from their busy schedules to join us, and wanted to especially thank them for sharing their stories and helping to further the conversation on these really important issues at such a critical time in our history. And we also want to thank our SCU students and everyone who tuned in. This event has been recorded and will be posted up soon on our website, and you can find that at scu.edu/engineering/WTWT. And so kind of what Akeem and AJ alluded to. So as a reminder to all the SCU students on the call, if you're interested in speaking more with our panelists, remember to join us on Zoom shortly after the conclusion of this event for our special Talk After Walk event with our panel. The Zoom link was shared in your SCU email this morning by Ricky. You can see the email, it's Ricardo Padilla Jr. And to the general public watching on our live stream, we hope you all leave here today with more tools to turn our thoughts, our words into meaningful action and to really build up our community. I think some really important takeaways that we've seen, was of course building up that community. And as all of our panelists mentioned, by sharing information, opportunities with one another, and taking the right steps to, bring everybody up to that next level. And to really stay motivated and inspired to be that change agent. And so one final thing, please remember to mark your calendars and join us on Thursday, January 14th at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time for our special season finale. It's featuring top Santa Clara University administration and community members. So the panelists that we'll be having is Erin Kamira Walsh. You guys know her as the lead scholars program director at SCU. Eva Blanca Macias, who's the VP for Enrollment Management, Lisa Kloppenberg, the Provost and Vice President for Academic Affairs, and Father Kevin O'Brien, who is, of course, the President. So be on the lookout for the promotional materials coming out on social media and help spread the word. This is going to be a really, really fun and engaging event. And before we end, I wanted to leave with one final quote from the late, great Ruth Bader Ginsburg. She said that real change and enduring change happens one step at a time. And so I think that's really fitting for our discussion and something you all should definitely reflect on. Again, see you all on January 14th. Happy holidays, everyone, and have a good night.